Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second part of Wigan Fan TV this evening. 11 p.m. in the UK, 6 p.m. over in America, and I'm joined by Nate, who's doing a fantastic job with Rugby League in America podcast. Nate, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join me.
Yeah, Sean, I appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Not a problem. I mean, we normally get a lot of viewers who interact with us with comments, but 11 o'clock in the UK, we're probably not going to get many viewers live. But I'm sure a lot of people will catch this either by podcast or on demand. I reached out to you as part of this rugbyleaguemedia.com network that we've started to try and broadcast some fantastic podcasts like Super League Pod that I know you were on with Mark a few weeks back. And really to showcase this, but I was so disappointed with myself that I had so limited knowledge of rugby league in America, and it's like it's an element to the sport that I didn't even consider to even be as established as it is. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit of how you got into rugby league first, Nate?
Yeah, so it's kind of a funny story how I got in. I got in by accident. So I at the time I was overseas. I was serving in the Air Force on a big multinational group deployment, and there were a bunch of Aussies and Kiwis. There's a British guy over there as well. But anyway, so that's kind of how it started, and that was because I had a rugby league background, obviously football and different sports like that, American or rugby union background, because that's what we get more of in the United States. So, but having said that, though, the guy had on a shirt. It was a Brisbane Broncos shirt. He had on a Broncos shirt, and that looked like the same logo of my high school. It's the same colors and everything else. And I was like, oh, that's cool. What shirt is that? And he told me, and then of course I was like, oh, that's really cool. He started to tell me about it, and then he just was like, hey, come out and play with us. So I went out with him, played around, and had a blast. And so it's that started being my thing was playing rugby league and doing that. So that's mainly where I've actually been able to play was overseas on deployments. So that's where I've done it. So
fantastic. We've got Ian who's watching at the moment, who's based in Idaho. So we've got a Wiganer over in Idaho, and Philip's watching as well. So evening, Philip. Like I said at the start of the program, I was so shocked at how established the USA Rugby League is. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the teams that you've got? The North Conference, the South Conference. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the teams? And they seem to be very much east side of America based. Is that right?
Yeah. They are for the most part. In the center, you have the Chicago Stockyards. They're trying to get some stuff done in the Midwest. There's some people in California that have looked into trying to do some stuff. People in Hawaii are trying to do stuff, but the league is established on the eastern coast. That's where it's at. And so you have the new team that's down in South Florida, the Copperheads. But it goes all the way up to Boston. So you have those different teams. So in the Northern Conference for this year, you have 7 teams. In the Southern Conference, you have 4. They play against each other, and then they go into playoffs, and then they go into the championship round. And the season starts the beginning of June, and it runs all the way through August. Then they have an all-star game in September, and things like that. But that's how it kind of runs. But you have Boston. You have 3 teams in the New York area. You have Philadelphia. You have a team in Philly. You have a team in Northern Virginia just outside of D.C., you have the Delaware Black Foxes, so they're in Delaware. And then down in the South, you have a team in Jacksonville, a team in Tampa, a team in Atlanta, and then, like I said, the team down in Southwest Florida. They're playing at Lehigh High School, and that's the new team, the Copperheads. So,
in terms of obviously, it's at an amateur level. I know when I was listening to the show that you did with Mark on Super League Pod, you were explaining, it's basically you have three overseas guys. Is that right? Can play within the side.
Right, so it's kind of neat. One of the episodes I did with Danny Hansen, he really got into it. So that's the commissioner of the domestic league, the USARL domestic league. But he talks about we can have 3 imports come over and play here in the States, each year with each team. But then if you're a guy who's played overseas, so let's say you're from England and you played here twice before, the 3rd year you don't count as an import. You get to count as one of the local players, so you can add the extra players to it that way. But it really helps. That influx, I've mentioned it a couple of times to different people and said it. I think it's really big because instead of just the coach maybe having a background in the sport and trying to teach it for a couple days a week and then trying to implement it on a game, when you have those couple extra players that are on the field that are helping, you add them to the guys like David Ulch and Nick Newland and CJ Cordelano, these Americans that played on the national team that have that experience. You just keep adding all that together, and it just makes the league grow faster and makes the league better faster.
How big of an issue is the fact that it's a grassroots sport in all sense of purposes? The traveling, although it's all based on the East Coast, the traveling and the costs involved in the traveling, is that one of the big hurdles that the clubs face?
Yeah, it is. It's a hurdle. So I think it's very, very, very important to know that they're always looking for sponsorship. They're always trying. They go out. These guys really, they bust their butt. They go out in the local community. They're finding local companies that are sponsoring them, um, and whatever they don't get sponsored, they're paying out of their pocket for love of the game.
Wow.
I mean, they're working their butt off. So they're traveling up and down
Wow.
the East Coast, and then they're going into the playoffs. They're doing all this on their own. And to have a major company come along and sponsor them would be phenomenal. But they take everything. I mean, they love everybody that wants to reach out and sponsor their players and their teams.
Well, that's an incredible effort for something that, I would consider is obviously a developing sport in the country, and people are that committed at that level is fantastic. We've got a comment from Andy here asking if that's a Broncos jersey behind me. It is. It's a Denver Broncos jersey, deliberately just to tie into the Denver test later on. I just thought that would be a nice little segue later on, but thanks for that. He's got a vomit emoji on there, so thanks, Andy. We'll talk about the Denver test and the World Cup and what that potentially means in terms of for growing the sport. I've got Mark, who interviewed you on Super League Pod. He has this thing about how many Wigan jerseys I have. I have a lot, Mark. If I'm going to do a lot of shows, and I need a lot of jerseys. A friend of mine who got me into NFL, we went to Minneapolis in October last year, went watching the Vikings.
Yep.
I've got him into rugby league. He got me into NFL. And the question that he has asked me to ask you is, where do you see this sport growing in places where there's a high dropout from college, and that skill set seems, there's such a high dropout from those that don't get through the combine and certainly don't get through the draft. Is that where rugby league in America is targeted at, or is that where it certainly should be targeted at to grow the sport?
So I think the beauty of it is that you can grow it from anything. That's the beauty of America, is we don't have that background like you guys do. Like you created the sport. Like you have a certain tie-in that will always be a certain something to the past, and that's not negative. I actually think I'm jealous that you guys got to start it and we didn't. But I mean, you guys have that long history, and ours is so new, and ours is hitting at the same time that all the social media stuff is hitting. So there's a lot of ways to find people, a lot of ways to attract players. Like the import players, they're coming from overseas to play for the summer. That there could be somebody that can come over. Like there's a guy that's playing for Nova right now who's playing rugby union up in, I think, northern Pennsylvania is where he plays rugby union. He's down with the Northern Virginia team playing for the year. So they've imported their own American. But in the high dropout rate from the college football, you can absolutely get them. But the biggest thing is you can just go into the local communities. You can find the football players, the soccer players, the wrestlers, and be like, hey, you still want to play sports? You're done with high school? Come on out. And it really, really helps. And once they see it, especially football players, like it translates. Like I played union for many, many years, and I've coached union at college and different things like that. I'm not anti-union. I mean, it's the joy of being American is you kind of don't have to be anti either one. But league is exciting. League is fun. League is awesome. But when it took years to learn like a ruck and a scrum and all, like scrumming it sucks. But but I've done it for many years. But it's exhausting, but it takes forever to learn it. Whereas in league, you watch the game one time and you're like, oh, okay, the field looks the same. Oh, okay, that makes sense. Oh, okay, like you can start to click really quickly. I think that's the important one, is just getting this, just people seeing it. As soon as they start to see it, you're just immediately, you can start to figure it out.
And I guess that's the importance, obviously, the World Cup and the Denver test that's coming up. In terms of sort of touching on the NFL, the season is so short for American football, for the NFL, and rugby league surely can take those players that aren't making it and expand it. And this is, I feel, potentially filling a void for those fans that love the brutal side of American sports and the contact sports, and filling that out for the rest of the year almost.
Yeah, absolutely. Union goes year round. Union competes against football, so they're never going to get certain players that are going to play like in the college level. But then when you get to that summertime, like, sevens is a big deal. Sevens has turned into its own thing. America has embraced it. Yeah. Sevens is massive over here. It's really it's as far as rugby goes, it's actually sevens, union and league as far as the rest of it. But everybody's chasing sevens, and it happened like that. And I think that's a huge thing, because you get those forwards who don't feel like running around, exhausting themselves playing sevens on that field. They're still going to work out twice as hard in league, but they don't realize, like, they don't want to chase. Like, if I'm a slow guy, like, I'm not that fast. I don't really want to chase a fast ass guy around the field playing sevens. But if I play 13s, I have a chance that I get to use speed, power, athleticism. I get to use all of it. and they can really start to capitalize on that from the people that are just deciding to take the summer off from sevens and get involved in a competitive league instead of playing in maybe 2 tournaments in a summer.
I think what you've touched on there, the growth of sevens in a lot of countries has just happened quite soon. And I think that's happened again, to go back to the NFL in England, that we've had the international series at Wembley for 10 going into 11 years now, and that's grown to be a 3, sometimes 4 game series that's sold out every year, and that's an incredible growth. I mean, obviously it's an incredible sport, but that just shows that's an appetite in different parts of the world. Obviously, where do you, before we get onto the World Cup in Denver, where do you see the level that you're involved in at the moment in America growing, in terms of, obviously we've got the potential New York franchise coming in, and we've got the Wolfpack, which I know that you're a big fan of from listening to your show and your discussion with Mark. What does that mean for the guys like the Fight and the Wombats? Who I heard your story about the story of the Wombats. That's definitely worth a listen. What does that mean for them? Is it a positive thing because there's going to be a professional entity, or are you concerned that might detract from the fantastic work that the likes of the Philadelphia Fight have been doing?
I don't think so. I don't think it detracts at all. I mean, yeah, from the standpoint of do they make a bunch of money? Yes, but they weren't. But some people are saying, oh, well, they take money away. No, they don't. That wasn't money that was being used for the domestic league. So in my mind, if you put that team there and someone sees that on Facebook, YouTube, they turn it on NBC, they turn it on whatever channel, it doesn't matter, and they see that and they're like, what the hell is that? From that point, they can go reach out and find those teams. In those markets specifically, especially New York, but in all those markets specifically, when they start to see that and they find out that they now have a team, by default, the player pool will grow. In my mind, it really will, because now you have those teams that are doing that. And all the teams in the North and the teams in the South will be there, but the teams in the North are close enough that they can go to a game as a team, and they can take a bunch of guys who may have just come out for the first time, or they're trying to recruit them. Imagine that. Imagine piling in a bunch of vans, going and having a guys' weekend, going to New York City, watching a team, or Toronto, but especially New York City, and you're there within a couple hours if you're in the North, and you can take 40, 50 guys and make a big weekend out of it, and you just recruited a ton of players. So in my mind, it helps drastically.
I mean, it's really exciting, isn't it? That is the potential, and it's actually tangible, and it's on the horizon now.
Yeah,
it's a real possibility. Mark, I'll just put Mark's comment on here. He talks about your enthusiasm, and honestly, ever since I started listening to your show, that's exactly, I think Mark's hit the nail on the head there. Is your enthusiasm for the sport, for somebody who's not from the heartlands, like you said. It's almost, I think you benefit from not being from England and not dealing with the civil war that's going on at this moment in time in Super League. But it's fantastic to see the growth, and honestly, keep up the fantastic work that you're doing. Ian on here says that he's heading to Denver with friends and family for the game, and looking forward to it, which is fantastic. Ian, how the promotion, I think, for the Denver game that I've seen on social media, that the sort of 5 downs and no helmets, that kind of thing, is fantastic promotion, I would assume, to the American people. How important is this test match in a week's time for you as an avid, the flag bearer, if you like, for rugby league in America? How important is this?
So I'll say first, I'm not the flag bearer. It's literally all the guys that are playing, coaching, because I'm just the guy sitting here talking into a metal box kind of.
It's important, though. It's important because we wouldn't, if you weren't doing that, we wouldn't be having this conversation, and this wouldn't be going out to thousands of Wigan fans over the next few days, and that. So it is important, Nate.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you what, if you're Wigan fans, here you go. I've been holding off on a team in England. I really haven't picked a team in England. I've held off. If your Wigan fans will follow these guys and prove that they're following them and get a major boost in numbers, I'll absolutely buy a Wigan jersey and start cheering them on without a doubt. But as far as Denver goes, in my mind, excuse me, I look at Denver as, so I think there's the pessimist person. I'm not a pessimistic person. I'm not. But
you don't come across pessimistic. Don't worry.
I try not to be. I try to never be that way. It doesn't. I have bad days, but I try not to. But the way I look at it is, those people are going to be if there's not 50,000 people in the stands, be like, oh, well, it's a failure. Well, if 10,000 people show up and then they never do another event, well, then it was kind of a failure. But if they continue to do events, 10,000 people show up, that's 10,000 people that wasn't focusing on rugby league. If you got, in my mind, you think of it from everything. You have to start to build those building blocks to get to 2025. And so you have to do it now. You can't wait until after the next Rugby League World Cup. And then the biggest thing to me is that it doesn't benefit us on the front end. It benefits us on the long run. But it benefits you guys. Like, so you just open up a new market. So if England, they're going to Denver, and I understand why they're going to Denver because of the time differences and the travel and all that.
Yeah.
Even though it's not the East Coast where the sport's at, and I think the person that brings it to the East Coast, like the person that brings like in Australia or in England or someone to the East Coast, they win like massively. But having said that, though, um, you know, I think you guys win tremendously from this because you open a new market, and we know marketing, we know selling stuff. Like we don't have like we very much capture like the only people that beat us is Asia, but we're immediate. Like if there's something out there, we'll jump on it like it's the greatest thing in the world and run with
Yeah.
it. And so if rugby league hits and Sam Burgess has a great game or Sean Johnson or something like that, and that person, and then they're smart enough to like reach out and contact the right person and have them continue to keep their name going here in the States, then that's huge. Like keep that footprint. Your guys win big time because you open up a new market. You get more money influx from people buying jerseys, whatever, awareness. I think you guys went on the short end, New Zealand and England in the next year, 2 years. And then after that Rugby League World Cup in 2021 in your hometown, then we start to actually like really legitimately start to win from that.
So the 2025 World Cup is going to be in Canada. It's going to be in America. I was listening to the conversation that you had with Mark on Super League Pod about the heritage players and the importance of the heritage players in 2013, the importance of them in 2017, but how it was refreshing to see the guys from the American League in the squad. 2025, that's obviously 2 World Cups away. Would you like to or expect that the growth in America would mean that you have a 25-man squad, you've got, I don't know, 18, 20 members that are playing domestically or sort of not of heritage status, if you like?
So I'm a big fan of us putting the best product on the field. Now, with that being said, most people probably hear that and they're like, oh, well, then he wants all the heritage players. I don't actually believe by 2025 when you're talking about it that you're talking about just heritage players or just the pool we just had. Because, again, all those, that dozen guys that played for the national team that are American or domestic based, and to say that too, I mean, like some of these guys, Mark Alfredahl and them, they've played over here before also, so that's huge to know. Like they've already given back to the league, but those guys, they're going to spend the next X amount of years. I expect like a Nick Newland and those kind of guys to be on the next national team, but they're just learning so much that they bring that back and they get around 1 or 2 of these players on this team. Then they build that experience. They end up at a place over in maybe they end up at a Manchester Raiders, or they end up at someone like that, and they're playing at at those levels, and they're building themselves up. But in my mind, when we put the best team on the field in 2025, we'll be putting a lot of domestic players on the field because they'll be the best Americans we have, and then we'll be throwing in some like whoever it is then, whether it's him or not, but like a Junior Vaivai, a Corey Makelum, like we'll be putting in someone like that is legitimately they're a world beater. You put them on the field with a domestic league that's really strong, and then you play a team game, and you never know what happens.
I think you summarised the skepticism about heritage players really, really well on Super League Pod. I think you said something about the lines of it doesn't really matter, where they come from. The fact is that they've chosen to represent America, and that was what they did in the World Cup. And so long as they're doing it to the full potential, I think that's a fantastic attitude to have, isn't it? To heritage players, it doesn't matter necessarily.
I think it's massive. Like going back, I've said it a couple times. I don't talk politics because I don't like politics. I don't like to talk about it. But when it comes, so despite whatever people think now, good, bad, ugly, whatever, but you go back to America and what we're all about. It's come to our shores. That's the Statue of Liberty's there. It's the first thing that greets you on the East Coast when you come up, and that means something. Like in my mind, it does. Like, I mean, my family, your family, we're all like, if you're here, you're an immigrant at some time. Now you may be an American, but this country truly was built on that. So that doesn't mean that we want 23 guys that are ringers and all of our domestic guys are sent to the side, because that would be beyond wrong in my mind. But having said that, though, if you do that, if you're like, oh, we just absolutely will never take a domestic player, you're going against what we're all about. It's about smart balance. These players are really, really good, and they're a heritage player, and they can play for us. Put them on the team. And these players are really, really good, and they're domestic players. Put them on the team.
Yeah. I mean, and there was a good number, wasn't there, last year? I don't know. I can't remember how many, 12 or 13.
Yeah, 12, yeah.
Yeah, which is fantastic, really. In terms of I know that this video is going to be watched quite a lot tomorrow when people in the UK wake up, and they're going to have an interest in rugby league a little bit in America, a little bit like I've had. It's like been an awakening over the past few weeks, to be honest with you, discovering all these teams. And I'm almost at the stage now, like you said, that you want to pick a Super League side to follow. I'm trying to sort of look through the names of, I mean, I'm drawn to the Wombats just because of the name to find a team. And I think that'll happen. People will start to pick up. Obviously, there's a lot of Wolfpack merchandise that's being sold over here, and because it's such fantastic branding. The domestic season in America is 2-3 weeks in at the moment. Is that right?
Yeah. So week 2 just finished. This weekend is week 3. It's gonna be a big one. So the game of the weekend, or the game that I'm saying is the round. The game of the round is going to be the Axemen versus the Rhinos, so the defending national champions against another one that has, and they've got Sean Ruckerson, our head coach for the USA Hawks, and then there's a lot of players in those teams that have national team experience, and I think it's going to be a big one for the South.
So people take an interest in the UK in the USA Rugby League. How do they follow it? Obviously, they listen to your podcast. You do these 1-minute videos, which I think are quite insightful. I think they're fantastic, to be honest with you. Just little sort of thoughts of the day and picking up on little elements of the game. You're going to be doing a lot more of that and interviewing players, I guess, for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I am. So a couple things, from a standpoint where you can find them. They all have a Facebook page. Almost all of them have a website. I don't have my website up yet. I suck at website stuff, and I'm trying to figure it out. Once I thought I had it, and I put it out there, and I realized that like 4 of the pages were broke, so I had to take it back down again. So once I get that fixed, I'll have a spot where if you go to my website, you can click the button and link right to their websites. But then from a standpoint of the league, you can go on the usarl.org or .us and look at the domestic or the national team. But go on Facebook. Some of these teams are streaming their games, or they'll put them on the next day on YouTube and share them on Facebook. That's a really big thing. As far as representing the players and stuff, one of the things I just recorded it. I didn't put the quick minute out. I'll put it out after this. But and this will be big for your guys because you'll get to figure out teams. I'm going to do a quick minute takeover. So for the entire month of July, there'll be a different person that plays, whether it's in the domestic league, whether it's a heritage player, an American playing overseas. I want to put Ryan Burrows on there, and we're going to put a different one, and you're going to hear about a different player every day for 31 days that plays either in this league or overseas. And so you can get to know them and you can have fun. And as far as the teams go, man, go check them all out. Like, they're all great. Like, I'm wearing the Mayhem jersey. I don't want anybody to be mad at me. I'm wearing the Mayhem jersey because I like it. It's got a collar. I felt like I needed to be a little bit dressed up. But no, I've got tons of stuff behind me. But everything from, the Brooklyn Kings and the Boston 13s all the way down to the Tampa Mayhem, the Jacksonville Axemen, everywhere. Check them out. They're awesome. So
I think that's really good as well. Like you said, a lot of the teams put the highlights on YouTube or potentially streaming as well. So there's going to be a lot of access and ready access and free access to some what I know from watching highlights so far is a good standard of rugby league. These are, particularly I watched a few highlights of you mentioned Atlanta Rhinos. Then they're the champions. They are a physical side. They are a very, very physical side, and they've got real athletes in that side.
They are. So if you go, if somebody wants to watch a game and they're just interested, go watch the 2017 national championship between the Rhinos and the Knights, the New York Knights and the Atlanta Rhinos. It was played in Marietta, Georgia at Life University. But you can go on YouTube and look that up, the USARL 2017. That was a great game. There's a great run at the very end, so watch it all the way through. But there's like a phenomenal run. But that's really good. That's a really good match. Nova Streams. I know Nova Streams. I know a lot of the teams, they put theirs out, like the Brooklyn Kings and the New York Knights. They put theirs out the day after. Excuse me. Tampa streams the game. A lot of them do. They really do. And there's some great games. The Jacksonville, I know Atlanta puts their games on YouTube. When Atlanta versus Jacksonville gets put up on YouTube from this last one or whenever it is they put it out, that'll be a damn good game to watch because that's going to be a lot of athletes. For those that don't know, playing in the North is there's a lot of power. There's a lot of all those things. In the South, there's a lot of speed in the South. Like, I grew up in the South. A lot of football is all about speed, and that's a big key part to the South.
It'd be great if you once those come out. If I don't find them, I'll keep an eye on the Twitter page that I'm sure you'll tweet out from, and we'll definitely retweet that out to people. Nate, before I finish, I just want to say, first of all, keep up the fantastic work. This is to know that there's somebody in America who's as passionate as half the people and are more passionate about rugby league as many people in the UK is fascinating. I know that the game's going to grow a lot in America, whether it as well as the New York side when that comes on board eventually. But I think this level at the moment is very exciting, and the fact that there's teams playing to such high standard.
Yeah.
And thirdly, when you finish tonight, send me your address. I think you're based over in DC. Send me your address, and there's a Wigan shirt on its way to you. I'm going to make sure we get a Wigan shirt to you, because you are going to become an honorary Wigan fan. We're not having you supporting any other side in the Super League. It has to be a Wigan fan. So make sure you send me your address, and we're going to get that over to you. And we want to see a video of you with a Wigan jersey on before the end of the year.
All right. Well, I'll do that. And tell your people when this comes out, that, like, go on all their websites, check out their gear. Like, it's everywhere. Like, I'm not the only person. I may be the person that you're hearing talk, but they're doing all the work, and they, like, every little bit helps them grow the sport. Buy them a ball.
Absolutely.
Reach out to the teams, but it all works and it all helps. So, yeah.
And just a little shout out to sort of a friend of Nate and mine, Steve Mascod. He's actually got the USA Rugby League jerseys on Mascod Brown's website. So if you did want to buy a USA jersey, go to mascodbrowns.com, and he's got, and they're really nice jerseys as well. Yeah, so really nice. Nate, I'll leave you to it and let you get on with the rest of your evening. It's 11:30 over here in the UK, but I'm sure we'll speak again very soon and maybe do a catch up in a few weeks' time, a couple of months' time.
I appreciate it. I really do.
Not a problem. Thanks, Nate.
All right, man. Cheers.